Hi, I'm Ron Green. I'm the Executive Director of digiSTORY KC. And at digiSTORY KC, we've identified a systemic problem in K-12 education that we're going to address, and we hope we can do that with the help of the Lean Lab Fellowship Program. What we've identified is that K-12 curriculum is not keeping pace with changes needed for 21st century communication education. What we're finding is that some schools are progressive enough to be keeping ahead of the curve, while others are lagging well behind. Let me give you an example of how a university is on top of this need for communication education to advance to the 21st century. At the University of North Carolina, freshman college students are expected to create not only a research paper, but they must transform that research paper into an app, a website, a documentary video, a magazine article, and a journal entry. What they recognize at UNC is that today's education situation is very different from the print-based conventional world of not that long ago. They recognize that dominant in today's curriculum education scenario is the fact that most communication is now working its way through internet-hosted networks, and the platforms that are being used are very different in nature and require very different kinds of communication from our past. Let me show you an example of that old world versus the new world we're entering. In that old world, you had a captive audience that received communication created by a few producers in a few formats: television, print, and so forth, and newspapers. But in the new world of an internet-connected society, there are many platforms that reach out to an audience that is very networked, and that network is very extensive. So any communication that goes out could be very far-reaching compared to what the publisher might expect. What you have in this new scenario is a very networked audience versus the old world of a very targeted audience. You have dynamic open linkages where there used to be very constrained channels of communication. In the old world you had a passive audience. In the new world you have an engaged, interactive audience. In the old convention there were traditional media formats. In our new world there are multiple devices and platforms. The old world represented major media and major producers. In the new world we have multimedia citizen producers. And in that old world, the publishers determine the path and the reach of any communication. In our new world of internet-connected communication, artificial intelligence and algorithms greatly expand the reach of any communication that goes out. So what is happening, we are experiencing a rapid shift from print to video. Look at this example from Common Core. Here's an English language arts literacy skill that is described as analyze how visual and multimedia elements contribute to the meaning, tone, or beauty of a text. For example, graphic novel, multimedia presentation of fiction, folktale, myth, or poem. What is interesting about this particular standard is that it calls out multimedia. Most of the Common Core standards don't even reference multimedia. In this case, it calls it out, but notice it's not relying on multimedia for its own unique native capability of communicating in different ways. It's using that multimedia as a placeholder to move conventional print-based solutions. So when you take a close look at what the standards are in Common Core, you will see a heavy print bias, and you will see a lack of attention to multimedia skills that kids are going to need for communicating in an internet-connected society. This example shows 3 standards from Common Core, and I show on the right column the corollary that if there were a taxonomy for multimedia skills, which there isn't, this shows how different they would be from what students are getting in today's curriculum, because Common Core and other standards like it are dominating the curriculum landscape. There are alternatives to Common Core like the ISTE standards, P21 standards, and others, but they are not providing the skill development that kids are going to need rapidly for a very different society connected through the internet. I've developed this digital storytelling scorecard to show how the standards are performing against 5 key digital storytelling skills. As you can see, they are not doing the job they need to be doing to prepare our students for the near future of internet-connected communication requirements. The reality is that kids are spending an average of 7 hours and 38 minutes per day with computers and digital devices. However, of students who spend 35 hours per week on digital media, 58% have low technology skills and do not know how to use the skills to create meaningful content. We experienced that in some of our earliest workshops with kids in the urban core around Kansas City. When we relied on them to come up with a decent story, instead they came up with chase scenes and fight scenes.
Talk to me.
These aren't stories. These are action sequences without all of the elements of good storytelling. What's happening is that a lot of times in schools, kids aren't getting the story development skills they need. My pet peeve is that many of the story arcs and story models that are being used are not really helpful for kids in trying to write a creative story from scratch. This model, for example, of stories needing a good beginning, a middle, and an end aren't very helpful at all for kids who want to know, where do I start with an idea for a story? So at digiSTORY KC, we've developed a digital storytelling model that we think gets kids on the right track, and it's been proven in our workshops that they can create very original stories that are solid from a story structure perspective. We want to use this model, we want to get this out into schools where kids can use it for digital storytelling solutions. In addition to the story model, we follow that up with storyboarding to make sure that kids are thinking through how their story will progress. We then teach them script writing skills so that they can have all the character dialogue and voiceovers in place before they start filming and recording. And we teach them general skills around multimedia storytelling that often aren't taught in storytelling from a print-based perspective. There are many barriers as to why teachers and school systems are not addressing the emerging needs of multimedia skills for kids. One of the reasons is that they are not being addressed in the standards, and what doesn't get into the standards doesn't get into the curriculum. Another major barrier, though, is that many teachers feel inadequate to teach in this very specialized area of multimedia. So at digiSTORY KC, we want to break through those problems and provide blended and online learning solutions for teachers that will make them feel comfortable offering these new skill sets that kids are going to need for their future. We are planning to take the curriculum that we've proven to work successfully in workshop settings, our stop motion animation workshop, and we are using Adobe Captivate to create online learning that will go to the individual students that will be combined with teacher facilitation and teacher direction in a blended learning situation. That will be accompanied by project-based work that teams of kids will work together on for a production experience. Our online learning solutions will be rich in images, rich in interactivity. Kids will learn the terminology and the actions they need to take through various technology solutions to create good sound productions. Our learning solutions will feature pre-test and post-test that will make sure that teachers know that kids are learning what they need to learn and that they're demonstrating the skills that are needed. We will provide teacher guides that have all of the information that a teacher will need to present the full curriculum, whether or not they have experience in media. Our teacher guides will provide the kind of information that teachers like to have when they're teaching a subject with which they're not as familiar as they'd like to be. We will provide clear learning objectives for every lesson. Every lesson will also identify the standards for 3 standards programs: the Common Core program, the ISTE standards, and the Engage standards. We will also always provide preparation work like what has to be set up, what materials are needed, and so forth. What we want to provide in our solution is a turnkey approach that gives teachers who may feel a little uneasy about teaching multimedia, we want to give them a turnkey solution that will make them feel comfortable in offering what kids are needing, whether they have that background expertise or not. I hope you will support digiSTORY KC's application for being a part of this important fellowship program. Thank you.